for Palestine. And to me, this is the most important. This is how we have communities, because fear and misinformation and propaganda is what always made these atrocities allowed. Because as long as people get the wrong information and they're scared, they will vote for their protectors, and it goes on. Fear and violence breed the same. That's what I think. Anyway, I'll leave it.
Thanks, Lena, and thank you, comrades, for coming out today on Day X. It's finally arrived. My name's David Vickers. I'm here speaking on behalf of Workers' Power, which is the British section of the League for the Fifth International. But I've also set up recently, as part of a collaborative effort with other Jewish people in the area, the Jewish Action for Palestine. If there are any Jewish people in the audience, I would encourage you to please look us up. Julian Assange is facing his final appeal today and tomorrow for being potentially extradited to the United States of America, where his lawyers say that he will face up to 175 years in prison. What crime is he accused of? Journalism. He's been persecuted just for publishing the dirty laundry of US imperialism and its allies, including Britain, Saudi Arabia and Israel, and exposing their crimes against humanity. Assange is on trial for having revealed information on a multitude of US war crimes, including extraordinary rendition, diplomatic conspiracies with dictatorial regimes, the massacre of innocent civilians by the US military, and the wholesale corruption of US allies. These revelations played an important part in the Arab Spring revolutions which shook the world, and particularly Western Asia and North Africa in 2011. Now, the motivations of this persecution, this prosecution, are entirely political. This is a show trial, if ever there was one. It serves to remind us all of a crucial lesson. While Britain and the US claim to be democracies and to protect free speech, that right only extends so far. The defence of Julian Assange argues that the extradition treaty between America and the UK forbids extradition for political offences. So far, this defence has fallen on deaf ears. The US is determined to make an example of Julian Assange, who is not even a US citizen and is not accused of committing any crimes on US soil. In order to escape American persecution, he was forced to spend 7 years locked in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, followed by 4 years locked up in solitary confinement in Belmarsh awaiting extradition. This treatment's bad enough. Even while in the Ecuadorian embassy, his conversations were tapped. He had no access to natural light or adequate medical care. But after Lenin Moreno was elected president of Ecuador, he was bribed and coerced into ending Assange's sanctuary, and Assange was dragged away by the police and kept in terrible conditions in Belmarsh prison. He was handcuffed 11 times. He was stripped naked twice in what medical experts have classified as relentless physical mistreatment and psychological torture. This all in an attempt to break his morale. After the first day in court, he even had his case files confiscated and was bundled from cell to cell. The next day, the judge denied that she had any powers to determine the conditions of his detention. Despite all of this terrible treatment, Assange has very good reason to fear extradition to the US. The harsh treatment he has received at the hands of the British state is nothing compared to the terrible way in which Chelsea Manning was treated, the source of Assange's biggest leak. She was arrested, abused, tortured, and sentenced to 35 years imprisonment, spending 7 years in a prison cell before her prison sentence was commuted just before Barack Obama left office in 2017. For much of that time, she was kept in solitary confinement and strictly clothing at night as part of a suicide watch, which even US Army doctors deemed unnecessary. She was woken up at 5 a.m. every day and forced to stay awake until 10 p.m. But this wasn't good enough for US former President Donald Trump, the current Republican frontrunner, who called her an ungrateful traitor who should never have been released from prison. She was rearrested in March 2019. She was fined $256,000 and she was jailed for a year just for refusing to testify to a grand jury, courageously standing in defence of Julian Assange. Her treatment is a warning of what Assange could face if British justice and Sunak's government hand him over. After all, there is a US presidential election this year. Even though Assange is likely to be treated badly under a future Trump administration, he can't expect much better from Biden. He's likely to be placed in solitary confinement in maximum security prison, all for his protection, of course. After the 2010 publication of hundreds of files on inmates in Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, WikiLeaks went on to reveal over 1 million confidential US documents over the next 2 years, including 255,000 classified diplomatic cables. This included several 100,000 official documents related to the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq from 2007, exposing the grim reality that lies behind the democratic smokescreen of US propaganda. They exposed US violations of human rights of inmates held at Guantanamo Bay, despite denials. They showed that the US was engaged in targeted assassination by drones. In 2010, they released a video which showed US troops laughing as a helicopter killed 18 Iraqi civilians. This was followed by thousands of US Army field reports exposing deliberate falsification, torture, and war crimes in Iraq. These leaked documents present a clear picture of power that views itself as having the right to interfere with the internal politics of other states as it likes. They reveal that underneath the rhetoric of defending freedom and democracy, US security chiefs cynically fabricated the war on terror in order to generate worldwide paranoia and Islamophobia, divide the international working class, and further their imperialist war aims. Without WikiLeaks, we would not have unequivocal proof of the large number of civilians killed in US attacks in Afghanistan, Iraq and Yemen. They provide an invaluable service to society by providing this concrete proof. WikiLeaks' publication of this classified material is one of the greatest exposures of American imperialist foreign policy of all time, and this is why he's been hunted to the ends of the earth. The attack on Assange is an attack on all of those who seek to expose the truth behind the propaganda machine of US imperialism. The persecution of Assange and all whistleblowers before him shows that the democratic power's cherished right to freedom of speech is limited and exposes their hypocrisy. Locking up journalists is something that they want us to associate with Putin's Russia, but is what's being meted out to Julian Assange here today in Britain. The fate of Julian Assange is a reminder to all of those who point to our society as a liberal democracy as opposed to other powers, and show the hypocrisy of this position. If they can do it to him, they can do it to all of us. So this battle is at the fault line of sharp contradiction between the values of our society and the methods which it uses to establish control over the population. His last appeal is today and tomorrow. After this, he will be left with no choice but to go to the European Court of Human Rights. All Democrats and all Socialists should stand and defend Assange from extradition and demand his immediate release from custody. We demand an end to all political torture, an end to all incarceration of political prisoners, an end to torture, and the freedom of the press. Julian Assange must be freed. Thank you very much.